A major problem in psychology research right now is the number of studies being published that are not replicable due to their lack of transparency and other factors such as poor methodology, poor generalizability, and measurement flaws. These studies produce findings that may not be credible, which poses harm to the general population who often look to research findings for guidance in their lives. This presentation will consist of a brief introduction to the topic of Boomerang Kids, a research claim relating to Boomerang Kids, and an evaluation of the evidence that supports this claim to reach a consensus of whether or not this claim is credible. Boomerang kids are adult children who return to live with their parents after living autonomously for a period of time. They include recent university graduates, adult children who have broken up with a co-resident partner, and adult children who have served in the military. And an estimated 40% of American adults return to live with their parents at least once during emerging adulthood. I investigated the claim that relationships improve among parents and their Boomerang children. This claim was presented by Dr. Joanne in the lecture on family relationships. In lecture, it was mentioned that these relationships improve such that adult children come to appreciate their parents more and there is no daily friction between them. It was also pointed out that these relationships are more successful when parents treat their returning children as adults. To investigate this claim, I looked into 4 empirical peer-reviewed articles that specifically studied the relationship dynamics among parents and their returning adult children. 2 of these were conducted in the US, 1 was conducted in England, and 1 was conducted in Canada. The evidence of this claim was evaluated along 3 dimensions: methodology, measurements, and generalizability. For methodology, I critically examined the use of interviews on this topic and the risk of response bias. For measurement, I critiqued the fact that some studies measured only one perspective of Boomerang child-parent relationships and also examined the risk of experimenter bias. For generalizability, I critiqued the fact that these studies only interviewed white, Western, and middle-class individuals. My evaluation of the evidence in regard to methodology is that the claim is not credible due to the drawbacks of using interviews as the sole research method and the risk of response bias in these interview studies. All of the studies examined Boomerang child-parent relationships via semi-structured interviews. While interviews allow researchers to get an in-depth understanding of the experiences of Boomerang children and their parents, the results attained from them are not representative of all Boomerang child-parent relationships. Furthermore, there is a risk of response bias in these studies, as Boomerang children or their parents could have given inaccurate answers to portray their relationships as being more positive than they actually are. The risk of response bias was also present in studies in which the presence of another person close to the respondent could have influenced their answer. For example, one study interviewed parental couples about their relationships with their Boomerang child. However, parents could have given inaccurate answers. For example, if one parent had a really close relationship with their child and knew that their partner did not have as close of a relationship, this parent could have given a false description of their relationship with their child to not make their partner feel bad. Therefore, using interviews as the only research method has resulted in a lack of credibility in this claim. My evaluation of the evidence in regard to measurement is that the claim is not credible due to the fact that most studies only measured one side's perspective of the relationship. To correctly make the claim that the relationship improves between parents and their adult children when they return to the parental home, we must learn about the perspective of both sides of this relationship. However, only 1 out of 4 studies sought to learn about the perspective of both the parents and their Boomerang children. The remaining studies just focused on either the parent's perspective or the adult child's perspective. Therefore, they cannot make a credible claim about the relationship overall if they only look at one side of the relationship. In addition, the risk of experimenter bias presents another fault in credibility. After conducting the interviews, researchers coded the interview transcripts to identify themes that help them draw conclusions about Boomerang child-parent relationships. In doing this, there is the possibility that researchers may have intentionally or unintentionally coded themes to fit with their hypotheses. This experimenter bias presents another reason why this claim lacks in credibility. My evaluation of the evidence in regard to generalizability is that the claim is not credible due to the fact that previous research relied on small, homogeneous samples that are not representative of all Boomerang children and their parents. First, all studies were conducted in Western nations. Second, all but 1 study made use of small sample sizes. 1 interviewed 8 parental couples, another interviewed 27 parent-child dyads, and another interviewed 30 Boomerang children. Third, samples of participants were mostly white and came from middle-class socioeconomic backgrounds. And fourth, 2 of the 4 studies were conducted over 10 years ago. Therefore, the claim is lacking in credibility because the results from these studies are not generalizable to families of differing backgrounds, including those of non-white backgrounds, as well as families from lower-class socioeconomic backgrounds. In conclusion, the claim that relationships improve between parents and their Boomerang children is not credible based on the evaluation of the evidence on the dimensions of methodology, measurement, and generalizability. Going forward, researchers should take these considerations into account and include participants of other ethnic groups.